It's light outside. Darkest before the dawn? Are your clocks broken? I've got 5 dogs, so how am I supposed to know which one is having which day when? You want me to murder birds? 2 birds? And with a stone? That's barbaric. Okay, I can't condone you punching clocks. Clock abuse is not something that I'm comfortable with.
You just don't get it, do you?
So as you can see, over the last week, I've had, I'll say, about a few miscommunications, which got me to thinking, we use a lot of phrases and idioms today that don't exactly say what we're trying to say, we just accept them. So I decided to go out and find out where these phrases come from and how did they start. So let's jump right in.
Well, isn't that interesting?
So if you've never knocked on wood, I'm going to go ahead and call you a liar, but I'm still willing to tell you the 2 places that they think that this tradition comes from anyway. The first of the 2 is that pagan religions used to believe that evil spirits lived in wooden trees, and that if you were near wood or trees and talked about good plans or things that you were hoping for, then the evil spirits might try to interfere with them. So this is where the knocking comes from, so that the spirits can't hear what you're planning or hoping for, so that they can't interfere. The other possibility is that tree worshippers back in the day used to believe that their gods and spirits lived in woods and trees. In order for good fortune, they would touch said trees if they were hoping for an event to occur, or they would touch the trees after a good event had occurred to give thanks. So if you've ever knocked on wood, you might be a tree hugger.
Next time you have a thought, let it go.
Well, isn't that interesting?
So strapping young lad is something I've always wondered about, and it's actually something I've been called too.
Liar!
Now, while the phrase itself probably seems pretty self-explanatory, the young and lad part, strapping probably doesn't mean what you think. It sounds like it relates to labor or something to do with straps, maybe horses. Actually, traced back to the 17th century English dictionary, it means strong, robust, or muscular. If it's talking about a man, it can also be talking about a woman, which means vivacious or lusty. So that answers that, but I guess now I have to find out, for my own curiosity and sanity at least, if those people were referring to me as muscular and robust, or possibly vivacious and lusty.
I wouldn't do that. I really wouldn't.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Chewing the fat is a pretty common phrase, at least where I come from. Now, as many stories as there are about where it actually comes from, I gotta tell you, I'm gonna be that guy, they're wrong.
We don't take kindly to your types.
It does not reference literally chewing on pieces of fat for the wealthy or when friends came over. The truth of it is that in 1855 is the first mention of it, when a book talked about the British military in the country of India while they were occupying it, and referred to chewing the fat as anyone who is sitting around groveling or belly aching. So essentially it's a slang term for groveling or belly aching.
You said that already!
Because of the fact that chewing the fat, as you can guess, basically just calculates to flapping your gums and not really getting anywhere. It's something to do, but it's not going to help you out.
Well, isn't that interesting?
I had always been told that raining cats and dogs came from when dogs and cats would hide in thatched roofs during storms, and when it got too slippery, they'd eventually slide out.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Turns out that's not the case. There's 2 origin stories, we're not sure which one's true.
Who's we?
I'm going to tell you both. The first one is that the Norse god Odin was actually the god of storms, and he was always depicted with either dogs or wolves or both, and they represented wind. In Norse culture, witches were also always depicted along with cats, and cats to Norse sailors signified heavy, heavy rainfall. So if you take one and the other, add them up, dogs and cats, heavy rainfall and winds. Seems probable. The second possible origin is that cats and dogs is actually a mispronunciation of the word catadupe, which in Latin means waterfall. But now that I'm hearing it out loud, that's really not that exciting, kind of a letdown. I should have started with this one and ended strong.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Mad as a Hatter, thanks to Lewis Carroll, is probably a phrase that we all know.
Stop that.
This one originates in England, obviously, where haberdashers, or for the layman people who make hats, would constantly work with a lot of chemicals. One of them being mercurious nitrate, a form of mercury, which was good for curing the felt in the hats. Now, mercury, as I'm sure you do know, is very toxic, and over time, the fumes of said mercury, and I'm sure other chemicals, would actually cause the hatters to have some type of brain damage, obviously rendering them a little bit mad.
I'm also delightfully mad.
Another fun fact, since I did mention Lewis Carroll, I didn't know this, and I finally learned it, that the 10 over the 6 on the Mad Hatter's hat is actually the price, which would equate to 10 shillings and 6 pence. So, don't say I never gave you anything.
Well, isn't that interesting?
At one point or another, I'm sure we've all stolen someone's thunder. I love doing it, it's so much fun.
Not cool, totally lame.
But we're here to learn. So where does the phrase come from? In the early 1700s, a playwright named John Dennis invented a machine for one of his plays that could actually mimic the sound of thunder. He put it in the theater, the play went on, and unfortunately, while the machine worked, the play flopped. So they had to leave the theater, and Dennis left the machine behind. You can see where this is going, right? So the new play in town and in the theater decided to repurpose his machine and use thunder in their play. So when they were using thunder in their play, Dennis was outraged and literally started telling people that place stole my thunder. So although that's an interesting tidbit, I think the funnier part is the fact that John Dennis is most likely the first person in history to ever complain about losing the clap of thunder. Why do I do this to myself?
Well, isn't that interesting?
Close but no cigar dates back to, I don't know, like 1,000 years ago or so.
Turns out the math is wrong.
Before carnival games were targeting kids. They actually targeted adults, and because men played most of the time, they wanted to have a manly macho prize for him if he won. So they would usually have something cheap but meaningful, like a cigar. And yep, you can probably see where this is going. If they did win, they got said cigar. But if they didn't win, then most times the attendant would get to say the phrase, close but no cigar. And I'll tell you what, I think it's a good thing that they decided to change the prizes when they decided to start marketing to kids. Otherwise, who knows how that would have gone. Hashtag prop comedy.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Letting the cat out of the bag actually goes back to medieval times when it was common to buy animals at a marketplace. At said marketplaces, one of the most common things was sold was piglets.
Like your mama.
So that you could grow them up and then you could butcher them. Most of the times piglets were sold in bags. And this obviously didn't let you see the piglet, so shady marketers would actually try to take advantage of this and put something cheaper like a cat inside the bag and sell it to you as a piglet.
Move this man!
So over time, it became a good practice to actually look inside the bag and see what you were buying before you paid your money. You'd look inside, and if there was something other than a piglet, say like a cat, you'd let the cat out of the bag and you'd expose the person for the con man that they were.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Blood is thicker than water seems like a pretty self-explanatory phrase, right? You're wrong.
You're fired.
The phrase we use today is actually a shortened phrase that was originally, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. This was back at a time when covenant meant friendship.
Those were the days.
So the phrase actually in its original text translates to, friendship is stronger than family. Now, I love my family, so I'm not saying this or proposing this, but maybe it does have something to do with the fact that you get stuck with family and you can pick your friends, so they're a little bit more valuable in that sense. Alright guys, so once again, thank you for watching if you made it this far. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. I can use every subscription. I appreciate every view. Speaking of views, don't be afraid to watch other videos like this one. Like this one. Watch all of them if you get the chance. And until next time, shine on all you crazy diamonds.